This is Dinesh D'Souza. The Biden administration seems to want to declare war against the American people. I mean, why don't they just do it? I mean, declare war against the American people. You're the president of the United States. Like, I don't know, gather up a group of people to like storm the Capitol, and that's already been done. Everything's a reboot. I'm sure this is a brilliant take and not at all an incitement to violence, and the assurance by dipshit D'Souza that that it's okay to want to fight your government with physical force, because that's probably what they're planning. You're just hitting them first.
The Biden administration
What
operating
the fuck
through
was that bell?
The Biden
You
administration.
guys hear that? Why is there some sort of weird...
The Biden administration operating through
the bell of doom, right?
General Merrick Garland has issued, well, it's kind of a declaration of war against the American people.
Yeah, that's totally what it is. It's a declaration of war to try and look into threats of violence against other Americans.
Quite serious.
Yes,
Now,
the police have done this too. And by the way, thank you for standing up for defunding the police, Dinesh. I don't go that way. I don't believe in that. But somebody's got to, and you're the greatest defender of that thought that I think anybody could hope for.
We all know they have been targeting these January 6 protesters.
No. They have not been targeting these January 6 protesters. Some of the January 6 protesters targeted people within the Capitol and had an intent to destroy the building and kill those people. And those people are now facing criminal charges because that's what we have law and order for, which I believe somebody hashtagged all last year, but I don't remember.
First it was Trump, then it was the Trumpsters who showed up in D.C. And we've always had the sense that
Excuse me, no Trumpsters showed up in D.C. That was Antifa and Black Lives Matter activists, black people who were wearing whiteface for 7 to 10 years, pretending to be viewers of the Celebrity Apprentice, and then, of course, wearing MAGA hats and sneaking in. So, Trumpsters, how dare you? How dare you, sir? There were no Trump supporters on January 6th. Those were all that was the fattest group of Antifa they could put together.
Have wanted to broaden.
There was some, you know how Antifa are all skinny. A lot of them there were 2 of them in a fat suit.
Pack to include everybody who's a political dissident. They're basically going full.
A political dissident. That's what you are when you threaten to murder someone on a school board. A political dissident. A dissident is here.
Soviet on us. So
full Soviet on us.
This has come to pass now with...
it has come to pass.
Who oppose...
That's why the bell. Bong! It has come to pass. And lo, he did speak upon them, and say unto them, let not your engine rev in the neighborhood. Shit.
Racial indoctrination. I mean, there's a parents' mobilization going on in this country. By and large, it focuses on 3 issues. One is the mask and vaccine mandates. Parents are irate about this. They believe it's an assault on their control over their own kids. They believe it's...
Well, they can pull them out and homeschool them, clearly. Or they can they can request remote learning in most districts until the pandemic rules are lifted. You could do that. You could go to these... I mean, it's not sexy. You could show up at these things and go, I don't want my kid to be vaccinated from this particular thing, or at least until there's more information about it, because we're worried about it. Obviously, my husband couldn't be here because he's on a ventilator, but I'm here with my, talking about my own child and our own freedom, and we would like to keep our child at home where it's safe. Excuse me. And until this is all over. But that's not sexy. You have to go in there and say, this is tyranny.
For their kids. And so there's a kind of social movement to oppose all this. Number two, critical
It's a
race.
social movement. I thought they were political dissidents.
Parents have discovered, contrary to the dishonest denials by
Dishonest denials. Is that an honest? Okay.
teachers' unions and by left-wing activists, critical race theory and the nostrums of critical race theory, namely, America's a bad country, all whites are racist, all this kind of nonsense. People who did nothing wrong, 5-year-olds should feel guilty because of what and their ancestors or great ancestors did.
So you want federal control over public education is what you're saying? Because these are all local problems. It is not ubiquitously being taught in American schools. CRT is not being taught in elementary schools at all. But these derivatives of it, where they're trying to teach, anti-racist or racial justice training under the guise of whatever, that stuff is the choice of the local school board. Just for the record, what Dinesh D'Souza, the conservative Republican activist and former convict, is asking is that the federal government or the judiciary, the federal judiciary, step in and stop them overall. Take over local control of schools.
This polarization and division of kids, preventing the normal social bonds developing between them. I mean, you can see why parents are up in arms. And finally,
yes, you mean like sending your kid into into school with a White Lives Matter shirt or something like that, and that kind of division where you're just kind of being a dick to be a dick instead of having the conversation. You just wear incendiary bullshit on your shirt.
Trans propaganda that is being pushed on young people at very young ages.
Trans propaganda is the Biden administration declaring war on the American people. Please do tell.
If you're a boy or a girl, have you ever thought about it? Ever had any doubts? Want to see a counselor? Don't tell your parents.
Jimmy, have you ever seen Turkish wrestling? You ever seen a grown man naked? Right.
So this
Dinesh D'Souza thinks that all schools are like the cockpit in Airplane.
Civilization is one of the more hopeful things, and it's, by the way, it's an exercise of democracy in the very sense that Tocqueville observed 150 years ago. In other words, it's activism at the local level.
Yes, locally threatening the lives of teachers and other people.
Not by some theoretical concerns, but by the actual beliefs.
Actual concerns as opposed to theoretical concerns, which are the same thing.
That their own values are being attacked, and being attacked in the very public schools that they, through their tax system, pay for. Now, the National School Board Association, very left-wing, sends a kind of an emergency...
Yeah, it's all like science stuff.
Appeal to the Biden administration. Dear Mr. President, quote, there's a growing number of threats of violence and acts of...
Oh, excuse me. Don't even utter those words. Threats of violence. That is political dissent. Okay? This is just people gonna be people.
Intimidation against, apparently, they say, teachers, against school boards.
That's actually happening. They're not talking about people showing up and being assholes. They're talking about threats and actual violence. That's it. Again, I don't know what do you want in the law and order world if you obviously want a difference between the two. In the same way, by the way, Dinesh is now finding out what a protest and a riot are two different things, and that the military or the police can be used to quell riots or deal with people who are looting or burning buildings down, but that's not the fault of protesters nor their responsibility, and the two are not the same thing. He's basically bitching about the same thing that people were bitching about last year. And to use their vernacular, there are very prominent conservatives who want to bail out violent felons who use the protests, about things that they were politically against as an excuse to commit violence. That's the same thing. It's the same shit.
And so what they're doing is they're calling for, pulling out all the stops. They want the government to invoke the Patriot Act, the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Hate Crimes Prevention Act, the Gun-Free School Zones Act, and they're calling on the Department of Justice.
Yes, and how are conservatives supposed to storm onto a campus, abduct a teenager, take him out into a field and shoot him if they're able to do all these things?
FBI, the Homeland Security Department, the Secret Service, to all mobilize together against who? Against apparently these really scary parents. Now,
well, the ones who are threatening violence and death. That would be the ones. So they can get on with it. So that people get yelled at, but if someone's threatening their life, we know where you are, we know where you live, we're coming for you, that kind of stuff. That's, makes it a little hard to do your job, Dinesh.
Where are the incidents that parents have actually done anything to anybody? Well, there are none. There's not a single one mentioned in these memos. But sure,
they're not mentioned. Let's see. School Boards Association reaches out to FBI for help as threats and violence hit meetings. Loudoun County board members have faced death threats. Prince William meetings have broken down with people screaming. There's been violence across the country. 2 men detained at school board meeting. Here you go. Let's see if these guys... Oh, let's shut this down because they're going to be an ad. Oh, how neat. I've always tried to use neat stuff, and I've never been... Oh. Okay, here we go. These are the folks. These people who gives a shit.
Anti-trans rights protesters refused to leave after the school board unanimously declared an end to a rowdy public comment period. Sheriff's deputies detained 2 men.
This is an unlawful arrest. I have a First Amendment right.
This man was released with a summons to court on a trespassing charge.
Listen to me. At this point, the meeting is over, right?
It's not over. It's not over.
It is not over. Was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor?
Deputies charged the other man, Scott Smith of Leesburg, with obstruction of justice and disorderly conduct after he allegedly physically threatened another person at the meeting.
Have you yourself received death threats?
I have.
It's terrifying.
Yeah, but, they haven't actually murdered anyone they said they were going to murder yet. So until they do, isn't it a waste of resources and overreach of the government? You should just wait until they're dead and then say, oops.
As if on cue, Merrick Garland issues a kind of order, and he calls upon...
On cue. Right around the time people are being threatened with violence, on cue, the FBI and the DOJ says, don't threaten people with violence. That's actually a crime.
These departments of the government to have a meeting in 30 days and figure out a strategy for how to deal with this serious problem.
Yeah, that's what you would do. If you were knee-jerking, for example, and just, swooping in and doing government overreach, if it was true tyranny, why would you need 30 days and have a meeting about what you're going to do? You know what, Dinesh, maybe they're just waiting for a teacher to be beat to death so that they can have an excuse.
Threats. Now, he does say that there is a legitimate right to speak up and a right to participate, but he goes that this can cross the line into threats and intimidation.
And it has.
Apparently, he's looking to create a kind of task force against what? Parental extremism?
No, against violence. There's no there's no law against helicopter parenting.
The idea here, by the way, is it's not so much that they're going to effectively be able to go after parents, but what they want is just...
What the fuck does parents have to do with it? Seriously. What the fuck does being a parent have to do with it? If you threaten someone's life, that's why they're going after you. If you're targeting a school board and you threaten people with violence, you're being arrested for threatening someone with violence. They don't give a fuck whether or not you got no kids or one kid. being infertile would not make you, and not adopting would not make you free from prosecution of terroristic threats.
What they want is to deter them. They're basically saying, hey, listen, you saw what happened to those January 6 guys. They too thought they were just exercising their voice. They too thought that they were merely...
Yeah, they were exercising their voice so loud that they shit their pants and they took the turd that came out and smeared it on the walls while they were walking around saying, hang Mike Pence. That's just exercising their voice. It's like a singer's warm-up. You know what I mean? Hang Mike Pence. Hang Mark Pence. You know.
Standing up for what they believed in.
They teach that at Juilliard now.
There can be consequences. Don't cross a line. And so Josh Hawley here raises a good point. He goes,
that sentence has never been true.
Any instance in American history where essentially the martial power of the U.S. government through all these police was summoned up to deal with school board meetings getting, quote...
No, but then we've never had school board meetings where people have been threatening to kill teachers and school board members in such great numbers that it became a federal problem. That, by the way, you had people driving across state lines to do it, or organizing on Facebook actions where they would threaten these people, or doxing them so that the people in their states could basically make a threat and have enough information to carry it out and scare the person enough that they were aware that they knew where they lived and all that. Of course, that's like saying, have the cops ever arrested anybody for murder in this town? I mean, until we had that murder.
And he goes, this is really an unprecedented escalation.
So is what these assholes are doing at school board meetings. Where's the fucking mystery? Why is this confusing to you? We have not had, not since, I would argue, the civil rights era, have we had parents groups this pissed at school board meetings and threatening violence. And they didn't do that at the time, initially. And people got lynched and murdered and shot.
See, what the Biden administration is doing is they're classifying noisily expressed dissent as A, disinformation, and B, domestic terrorism.
Well, no. If you're just noisy in the thing, you're not going to get hit with the domestic terrorism thing unless you say, I'm going to find you at home and kill you. That would be the terroristic threat. And because you're doing it for political reasons. You don't care about that person individually. They didn't, welch on a bet or something, or cheat on, with your wife on you or something. It's political reasons. That's what makes it terrorism.
They want a society in which there is no such dissent, or at least no such effective dissent.
It's only effective, according to Dinesh D'Souza. Dissent is only effective if it involves threats of murder. Because you can't convince someone. Can you imagine that? Convincing someone that they're wrong about something and actually having a cogent argument and presenting it in a balanced and decent way with enough people where it outweighs the generalized thought form and explains it. No. Who's got time for that shit? Just threaten to follow them home and kill them. And that's effective dissent.
Now, the bad news is that, when we look back,
the bad news is that a serious topic has you being bouncing it around like a seal with a beach ball.
Republicans who voted to confirm this guy, Merrick Garland. I don't know if they did it out of guilt because, the guy didn't get in the Supreme Court. In fact, we're very thankful now that McConnell did not let this extremist fanatic get on the Supreme Court.
Extremist fanatic. Yeah, that's why he's trying Trump for all the laws he's broken right out of the gate. Like, he can't be stopped.
But McConnell voted for his confirmation.
Yeah, an extremist. These extremist lefties, they're always forming a panel in 30 days to look at a problem and perhaps put together a task force. It's like Stalin-esque troop movements.
And so did many other people, including a bunch of good guys. They too went along. Lindsey Graham went along. John Cornyn went along. Burr went along. Thune went along. Tillis.
That's because a lot of this shit is happening in their states, and they've actually heard the reports that their teachers are going to get killed.
All of this shows that the Republican Party is not awake to the seriousness of the threat that it faces.
That's right. Well, they are weak and pathetic and spineless and visionless and stupid and whatever else Hannity said. That is true. Yeah. That's a fact.
I guess if there's a silver lining in all this, it's simply this, that the left has realized that they're in trouble. Their ideas are
that's what we've realized. Our ideas are in trouble because the people that carry those ideas around are going to be murdered by thugs and lunatics. We're in trouble because the right, after having lost every intellectual debate, is now just threatening to shoot women in the head. That qualifies as trouble.
winning. Nobody believes their nonsense. This critical propaganda, they've got to deny they're even doing it. If it was so smart, if it was so sensible, so obvious, the best they can do is say things like, well, surveys show that parents want their kids to learn about slavery. Of course they do. Parents want their kids to learn about the civil rights movement. Of course they do. The issue.
That's not where all these death threats are coming from. What the fuck are you talking about?
Is how is this propaganda being taught? Because after all, what seems to be going on is...
And by the way, if the school teaches this, how am I ever going to get it out of my kid's head? I mean, it's basically a hypnosis center.
Essentially, the replacement of...
By the way, for the record, high school especially, but middle school and other than like don't be a prick as far as like sharing limited resources when you're in, you know, elementary school and like, did you carry any of the ethical and moral lessons of high school or middle school with you for your whole life? Or did you carry them from movies and television and your own parents and the music you listen to, arguably? I would say music actually has more of an impact on the moral and ethical feelings and concepts available to the average kid than school ever does, even if they teach it in class. As a matter of fact, the in class, the more they teach it, the more of a tendency you have to go, all right. Like literally they teach bullying stuff in my kids' elementary school, and what it has resulted to is that bullying is now just a nickname for being a dick. Like, you know what I mean? Everything's bullying now, and so nothing is.
Discussion and fairness and balance
Yes, we're fine with discussion and fairness and balance. That's not the problem.
Casa is a modern way to care and earn more from your vacation home.
Fairness and
Anti-trans
balance.
rights protesters refused to leave after the school board unanimously declared an end to a rowdy public comment period. Sheriff's deputies detained two men.
This is an unlawful arrest.
You know, fairness. You know, balance.
this kind of hard-edged ideological indoctrination backed up, as in this case, by the police power of the state.
By the police power of the state. Yes, they're going to roll in and hold a gun to your head and make you watch your kids be taught CRT and trans rights and Marxist philosophy is the thought, which they aren't. Holy hell, look at these people and they're worried about what teachers are teaching. Well, that's exactly right, Sonia. The problem is that these folks, what they're teaching their kids as far as behavior and understanding of the greater world is a real danger, but they'll never see that. What they see is a real villain that they are fighting against. And again, this goes towards like what I was talking about with Stuttering John and, you know, why Trump hasn't been put in jail. Because a lot of people can believe a lot of stupid things. And if you can go into court saying, I wasn't lying when I said this, I was just stupid. I actually think this is true. Yes, Dinesh is a very weird dude. Bannon's calling for stormtroopers. Exactly. Yeah. And he's not going to get them. And by the way, the only people that create a serious threat out of Steve Bannon are people who actually allow him to be thought of as a serious threat. He needs to be mocked incessantly for the human excrement that he is. I mean, he needs to be pointed out as a clown everywhere. And the minute people are like, oh God, he's got power, then that's all they need to know, because the people who would cling to his bosom or his pants leg need you to believe that he's a real threat instead of a disgusting, unbathing, gin blossoming sociopath.